Hi everybody, this is Here from the Birds, back with another Shadowlands video. And in this video I'd like to talk a little bit about Holy Paladin damage, specifically in raid settings. And we had a quick run through for our guild of a normal, just to get a few people some gear for their alts and those kinds of things. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what I was doing when we went through that raid. My healing core is pretty strong, and so I decided I'd like to see what kind of damage we can do as a Venthyr Holy Paladin, to check out in part what some of our world first raiders were up to, and see if we can kind of replicate some of their success even at this lower level, in part to help plan for further content. So mythic bosses that require a sort of damage threshold, what can Holy Paladin do to provide some extra oomph? And what I found was pretty surprising. It's really strong. Specifically, Ashen Hallow is excellent. So I'm going to look at a little bit of Warcraft log information, and we're going to walk through each of the boss fights just from the damage profile perspective of the Holy Paladin. Now, on many of these fights, I'm also doing healing on top of that. Hallow does that as well, and we're just doing our normal rotation outside of Hallow, prioritizing a little bit more Hammer of Wrath. But let's take a look first of all. Just you can see here my character getting essentially orange parses across the board. This is normal, so it's not really significant, except to say that it works. That's mostly my takeaway from this. Not that, oh, I'm the best or anything. It doesn't have anything to do with that. In heroic and mythic content, you're going to have to take a little bit more time to heal people, and you probably will not have as much time to damage. But most of the damage coming out here is passive, and I'll show you why. When we move to the first fight in Shriekwing, notice here, guys, Ashen Hallow's damage alongside Hammer of Wrath and the buff that it gets from casting it while within Hallow are really, really quite high. But also high too in our regular rotation would be Judgment, our melees, Crusader Strikes, and our Holy Shocks going into the boss. Note here, guys, Glimmer of Light doesn't really do a ton of damage. This will go up a little bit if you're doing a little bit more healing on your raid, because the Glimmers will go into the target. But for those of you who are worried about picking Glimmer over things like Beacon of Faith, it won't really affect your damage that much. And we saw this a little bit in the World First race. So just be aware of that. And guys, I don't even think I was doing the best build or best pull, but overall this is 1.5k DPS across the entire fight, and Shriekwing obviously has phases. You can see here the profile of this. In our Lust window, we have a lot of damage from Hallow. But look at also this gray portion, Hammer of Wrath, doing just a ton of damage. And then we get another set of Hallows in here, I believe, at the end. Yeah, we get one more Hallow at the end. So even when we're back on the boss, we're still doing a fairly significant amount of DPS, almost topping at 4k, I think, when we have our Hammer of Wrath running off of our wings. So using things like Divine Purpose alongside Awakening is going to give us more uptime on our Avenging Wrath. Could we have put in Avenging Crusader? Potentially, but that actually reduces the damage of our Hammer of Wrath, since Wings gives us damage, and it reduces the chance to crit. So both things we don't really want. Anyways, that's the damage profile for Shriekwing. For Altimor, kind of a similar pattern, though it's going to be a little bit higher at the opener because we have 2 targets, and also at the ending we're going to have 2 targets as well. So you're trying to aim, if you're looking for major DPS out of this, for at least 2 casts within a boss fight. And in heroic and mythic stuff, obviously it'll be usually a longer fight, so you can plan out your Hallow for specific windows of healing. But also just look at the damage, guys, coming out of this. We have 1.8k DPS across this entire encounter. This is, of course, prorated. I didn't do any damage to the ad that has the bonus. And Warcraft Logs is going to take that away. Anyways, you can see here, bonus damage to the Shades of Barghast has been removed. Hammer, just plowing the boss, guys. You can see if we had taken something like Mad Paragon to go with this instead of our Shock Barrier, we might have poured even more damage into this. So I haven't even got around to testing Mad Paragon and the benefits of having an even deadlier Hammer of Wrath. But on the whole, guys, punching out 1.8k DPS as an addition to your group is pretty solid. And that's the main takeaway for any kind of Venthyr Paladin build, these huge CDs are also representing a lot of healing if you need it, so you can plan for them, but it pumps a lot of damage. Hungering Destroyer is an interesting case because we have fewer targets that can receive the direct healing from Hallow, but people are going to be largely stacked, so they will be in there for the healing side if it's there. However, you're going to have these in and out moments where you have to run away from the boss, and Judgment, Hammer of Wrath, again, just when we're casting these things as often as possible, we are getting quite a lot of value out of them. Notice also, guys, I think my weapon's a 180 intellect weapon, but our melee attack over the course of the fight, 113 hits, is pouring in a lot of damage. So for those of us who want to do the Holy Light build across different encounters, it's totally fine. We do lose out on some damage from our melee strikes while casting those abilities. So just be aware, if your focus is to add damage, you're likely going to want to go for Beacon of Faith or for Glimmer of Light. You can see Glimmer is okay here on the damage side, but not offering us anything so substantial that we would want to break the bank. So 1.7k overall on Hungering Destroyer seems pretty decent to me. We'll find, again, a sort of theme developing here. Hammer of Wrath, Judgment, Ashen Hallow, and Melee are going to be our top contenders. Some of our Holy Shocks on Enerva are going to be going into the team, so there'll be less Holy Shocks on the boss, but if there was even less healing in certain moments, you can pour even more Holy Shocks into the boss. Just, we're spiking here, guys, at upwards of 6k, 6.5k, 7k. I think this is like 190 eye level, something like that, and we don't have Mad Paragon. So if we factor in, I'll just move over to the healing side, how much Shock Barrier is doing, which is quite a lot of our healing, almost 10% of our healing here, and Ashen Hallow, how much it's also doing. If you didn't have access to that and instead you had our Mad Paragon, you would have about 30% more damage on Hammer of Wrath over the course of this. So 26 casts. You might even get a few more casts out, given that we could pair these two together, have your Ashen Hallow reducing your wings, longer wings time, those kinds of things. Move over to Artificer Xy'mox. Partly due to the way this fight is structured, and you have to move in and out of range. If you have to get seeds out or you're dropping a portal, those kinds of things, your abilities will change, but still very similar patterns here. And on the healing side, just Word of Glory's doing well. Ashen Hallow itself is pumping out 14% healing. Shock and Glimmer doing what they normally do, really, really good. And Judgment of Light also excellent. That was 1.3k on Xy'mox, which I think was kind of low in my opinion, but nevertheless okay overall. Here's where it gets a little bit nutty. Sun King Salvation is actually more of a healer fight, but notice the contribution of Ashen Hallow. I think specifically at the beginning, and I think at the end, how much damage this is doing. We are getting upwards of 5k damage spikes on both sides of this encounter, which is absolutely nuts. And Ashen Hallow, guys, at 2 casts doing 47% of our damage. This is alongside the healing it provides, so we did 4.7k HPS, Ashen Hallow contributing 8% of that and throwing a lot into our beacon target as well. This is almost strictly a Holy Light build, so we have Inflorescence in this build, we are casting Infusion, buffed Holy Lights onto Kale, we're using Beacon, we're using Glimmer because we want the bigger beacon on Kale, but the Glimmer is not really contributing that much in this case because we're just focusing on Holy Lights. But even still, our damage done is reasonable for what we're talking about here. We're almost 800. It could be higher, of course, if we'd focused on it, but look at the contribution here. Divine Toll can't come anywhere close to this. On Council of Blood, we're getting close to 1k. This was, I think, another poor example, but notice where the spike is, guys, on Council. We hit almost 5k in that middle portion when we dropped our second Hallow. We could have waited until Lust, but there wasn't really that much of a need, in my opinion. And on the healing side, this is fairly reasonable for what was going on. Look at, again, Ashen Hallow, just pumping out 14% HPS all passive, all by itself. Really good for your melee. This one we had a lot more casts of Hammer of Wrath compared to some of the other pools, so 28 compared to like 22 or 23. Sometimes it's nice to just take a look at what these abilities are doing, and you can plan if you need a CD at this moment, at the 5-minute mark or something, you can plan for Ashen Hallow to really pump. This is good, especially for Council, where Council is a fight where you have thresholds of damage coming out depending on how fast you're pushing. So as bosses get lower, there's a lot of rot going out, and you can use Ashen Hallow as a CD there. We used it on pull. We could have waited until like a minute 40, something like that, when the first major rot portion comes out, dropped Hallow, and had basically an entire CD ready to go. And that would have put us in good standing, but we just wanted to pump damage to see what it was like, so that's what that looks like. Sludgefist, we've got 1.6k DPS overall, and this is just pounding all kinds of Hammer of Wraths. We open with Hallow. We could have put Hallow together with our first pillar, and if we'd done that, it would have spiked really hard up here, probably close to what we see here at the end, where Ashen Hallow is pushing 5k DPS right before the end when we lust. But the problem is, if you put it in the first pillar on a normal, probably on heroic it's a bit different, certainly on mythic, your timing will be off. So this first Hallow will go down, you'll do a ton of damage, and you won't get a second one off. But notice here, guys, 5k spikes of damage with Hallow, but more than that, the Hammer of Wrath's just throttling this boss. Really, really, really strong. You can see Mad Paragon could also be really nice here. On the healing side, I think we're absolutely fine. We're in the 4k range. Ashen Hallow just doing buckets of healing alongside our beacon targets. For Faith, we don't have Glimmer here because we want both tanks to be healthy. Shock Barrier again, guys. Really strong Lego. Get it. It's good. Finally, last two bosses. Stone Legion, obviously multi-target, so the Ashen Hallow's damage is going to go up. We have 1.4. You can see the spikes here on pull. Kind of close to 5k. And then at the end in the Lust, also close to 5k. It's huge, huge jumps in damage. On the healing side, it's also doing respectable amounts, as we might expect. This is a sort of low damage fight. There's not actually that much going on. I think we did like 2.2k, and on the damage side we can just pour it in. So our Shield of the Righteous casts are up a little bit from other battles, but just notice, guys, melee, judgment casts, these are all pretty significant contributions. Consecration as well, and we can pour more Holy Shocks into the boss. All of this adds up in the end. You'll note with this kind of a build, Crusader Strike is going to be less casts overall than if we didn't have to cast Hammer of Wrath so often. So if you're playing Kyrian, you'll have less access to Hammer of Wrath casts, which makes it awkward if you're trying to play Divine Toll in a raid, because Divine Toll interrupts the development of your holy power generation through Hammer of Wrath or Crusader Strike. When you have to make that choice and you have Divine Tolls in the back of your head, it sometimes makes the math a little weird. Ashen Hallow is also going to push Crusader Strike down, even if you have Crusader's Might, which we do. So we could be resetting Holy Shocks, but we sort of prefer to throw damage at the boss because we're still getting a holy power for it. These are things you have to weigh a little bit. And then on to Denathrius, where again, this thing's just, Ashen Hallow's just pumping. This is a fight with a lot of movement in it. So once we get to phase 2, there's a lot going on. We get 3 casts of Ashen Hallow. The second one's kind of poor because it's in phase 2 where we're moving. Nevertheless, it's hitting a few adds and also hitting the boss. It's doing about 1k all by itself. On pull, of course, really strong. And then in the final phase when he's a little bit centralized, it's also quite good. On the healing side, I think this was fine, something like 3k. Ashen Hallow can be leaned on at the beginning when he's pummeling everybody and all the ads come out, and then at the end when people are dying. So just a nice CD to cap things off. Pretty reasonable overall. Again, the point of doing this video is not to boast about my own stuff. I really just wanted to test out what is it like for these World First Raiders to use these tools. And we didn't use all the tools they use. They use like Light's Hammer and stuff like that. The goal is to show you that if you'd like to do a lot of damage while taking care of your own duties, Even with a Holy Light build on Sun Kings or a Holy Light build in other ways, you can really lean on the power of Hammer's Wrath alongside Ashen Hallow. It's really strong and productive and largely passive. The bonus, of course, is Hammer of Wrath is going to build you Holy Power at range, so it's kind of a better version of Crusader Strike, meaning you can throw it while you're moving. Really excellent stuff. Hope you guys enjoy. If you have comments or you'd like me to take a look at some of your own logs and talk about what's going on and how you could improve or how you can put more damage into the fight, that kind of thing, please let me know below. But guys, if you haven't tried Venthyr yet, it's a blast. It pumps on damage. Anyways, good to see you guys. We'll talk to you again next time.